Wayback Wednesday, sponsored by Davenport Auto Park, the ride of your life. And also sponsored by Flores Glass, serving the area since 1977 with residential and commercial work.
Good evening, friends, and welcome to another episode of Wayback Wednesday. I'm Randy Adcock. So glad you could be with us. Got a lot to talk about tonight, but before we get into everything, I just wanted to take a minute and wish everybody a happy upcoming July 4th. Our next show will, of course, be after the July 4th holiday, so I wanted to get that out tonight and hope everybody has a safe and fun, enjoyable July 4th. You know, speaking of July 4th, I was thinking about topics for tonight's show, and what better topic for a show around the July 4th holiday than Independence Day and how this country came to be independent. And so while doing some research for tonight's show and not really having any particular theme in mind other than it's July 4th and Independence Week coming up, I was actually just doing some random searches and came across a couple of very interesting personalities, people, and so we'll share some of that with you shortly. But also I had a caller this week call me and ask me about a restaurant. And I'm sorry to say I could not for the life of me remember the name of that restaurant. Many of you may remember we've talked, it's been a couple years ago since we covered this, but we did talk about both the Rio restaurant and the restaurant that was there prior to the Rio being there. It was named the Carlisle Restaurant. It's out on North Church Street there where the Elks Lodge most recently is in that building. But anyway, the customer called and was trying to remember the name of the restaurant that was there, and I could not remember either. I could not remember Carlisle. We both could remember Rio. He asked me about the restaurant there by Rio, and I said, I know it starts with a C. In my mind, I was trying to form the word. I just couldn't put it together. And later on, it came to me, it was Carlisle. So we're going to go back and revisit it tonight, the Rio restaurant, the Carlisle restaurant. And an interesting fact about the Rio restaurant that I didn't know, and I'll get to that shortly also. But, one of the things that I find most enjoyable about this show week in and week out is that, I've said this many times too, I learn something every week, either from someone who calls in and shares a memory with me, or while I'm doing research for whatever topic we happen to be on that night. I learn something every week, and I'm born and raised in Rocky Mount. I'm on not just this side of 65 years old. And so, it'd be easy to say, I've been here long enough now, I should remember all this stuff, but frankly, I don't. And so some things that I come across, it's just really nice to have it brought back to my attention. Oh, we got a call. Let's get this call. Hello, caller, you on the air?
I think that place that you're speaking about, back Carlisle, I think it was known as Club Carlisle.
It was. That's exactly right. It was called Club Carlisle.
I'll let you go. Goodbye.
All right, buddy. Thank you. Yeah, it's a really nice place, too. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes, too, and we'll show you some pictures. But, yeah, as I said, every week I learn something I didn't know the previous week. And so this week it started out looking for information that I wanted to share with you about Independence Day and our struggle to become independent from Great Britain, and stumbled across a couple other things, too. So, anyway, that being said, let's jump right into item number one, Lee. This is actually a little short clipping that came out of Rocky Mount Telegram, October 24th, 1950. And you see there it says, very, very quickly, business changes hands. Carlisle's restaurant and club on US 301 north of here has changed hands. The property has been leased to Walter Mercer Jr. and Isaac Emerson. The name will be changed and a new manager has been employed. Okay, so this is October 24th, 1950. The Carlisle's restaurant is no more. Now, just prior to this, Carlisle's had been apparently a fairly popular place. In fact, Lee, item number two, if you would, just a few months prior, July of 1950, this ad appeared in Rocky Mount Telegram, announcing Carlisle restaurant featuring Walter Plummer and his orchestra in the Blue Room, Saturday night, no cover charge, $1.50 minimum, and of course you see the number for reservations there. But, this was a popular place, and I'm not sure why the decision was made to sell the business. I'm not sure whether the owner just retired. That's a possibility, I suppose, or just got tired of being in the business. I don't know. But in any case, up until it was sold in 1950, it appeared to be doing a pretty brisk business. But indeed, it did get sold. Item number 3, Lee, the Rio restaurant came into existence in 1950, shortly after this Carlisle changed hands. And this was a picture of the restaurant as it appeared in 1952. And if you'll notice there, it's got the little tower on the front, like a lighthouse on the front of it there. I do not remember, this was before my time, obviously. I can't say I remember this restaurant being here, nor the Carlisle for that matter. But in any case, it was obviously a really attractive building, and just like the Carlisle before it had been, the Rio was a really popular place. In fact, item number 4, if you would, Lee, November of 1950, I should have put this up first instead of the other one there, but anyway, this was an ad that appeared, says, announcing the opening of the Rio restaurant Thursday, November 2nd, tonight, formerly the Carlisle Club, under new management. There you see the list of proprietors there, Isaac Emerson and Walter Mercer Jr., both experienced restaurant men. They have moderate prices. They're promised the best food is their pledge, catering to parties and banquets of any size. Your trial is all we ask. Meet you at the Rio, the former Carlisle Club, 1 mile north of Highway 301, and you see the number 21927. So, as I said, it was definitely a popular place. And one of the things I found odd was that, go ahead, Lee, and put up item number 5 if you would, too. December 24th, 1952, they had a dance on Christmas Eve. This ad appeared here, advertising a Christmas night dance featuring Tommy Cofield. Well, let me back up. The ad appeared Christmas Eve. Obviously, the dance would have been Christmas night, which would have been the 25th. But this ad appeared December 24th in the Rocky Mount Telegram. You see, they had a featuring Tommy Cofield, a 6-piece orchestra. The band started at 9 o'clock until. And again, it was just, they had nightly bands, they had different variety acts. In June of 1953, they had a variety show that took place there in the Rio. Item number 6, if you would, Lee. June the 7th, 1953, this ad appeared in the Rocky Mountain Telegram. For one night only, Tuesday, June the 9th, Bruce Bubbles Becker and his Spotlight Review featuring Roy Maurice Unbelievable Acrobatics, Ruby Walker Dancing Darling, Bob Gentry Comic Impressions, the Java Jills Exotic Dancers, plus his famous 11-piece orchestra. And you see there to the left, starring the voluptuous Tony Young. Now, I looked just to see what I could find. I seriously looked on Google. I looked on the newspapers.com website. I could not find any reference to this lady whatsoever other than this one ad, this one time, this one appearance right here. So I'm guessing Tony Young must have been a stage name. But for whatever it was, she did not appear too many other places because I could not find another reference to her. So if anyone remembers this, the voluptuous Tony Young, who appeared at the Rio restaurant June the 7th, 1953, I would sure love to hear about her. She was obviously a very attractive lady, and I'm not sure what her talent was besides being gorgeous. I'm supposing she was some kind of entertainer, singer perhaps. She may have been an actress, I don't know. But I really did sincerely try to find something about this lady, and could not find anything other than this ad and her picture that appeared in this ad in June the 7th, 1953. Okay, as I said, the Rio restaurant, just like the Carlisle Club before it, was a very popular place. They booked some, fairly good size entertainment there, bands and so forth. You see there was comedians, there was dancers, there was all kind of entertainers who would come to the club and put on acts and shows and so forth for the people who were dining there. And so it was a very popular place. Sadly, however, December the 17th, 1956, the Rio burned to the ground. Item number 7, if you would, Lee. This is the article and pictures, the company pictures that appeared in the Rocky Mountain Telegram, December 17, 1956. And you see this picture right here. The caption reads, "Rio is gutted. 5 rural fire departments rushed to the Rio restaurant 2 miles north of Rocky Mount on US 301 about 3 a.m. Monday, too late to save the structure from fast-spreading flames. Estimated damages of $150,000 resulted from the fire, which ate out the interior of the building, leaving only blackened walls standing. This is 1956. Now that tells you, for a fire to do $150,000 of damage in 1956 dollars, this was a fairly swanky place. And unfortunately, it burned entirely up. Item number 8, Lee, this is another picture to accompany that same story. And you can see the flames is bursting out of the top of it. The caption reads, "No Christmas parties. Shown is the rear of the burning Rio restaurant as flames destroyed this favorite Rocky Mount eating place. A crammed schedule of Christmas parties planned for pre-holiday festivities were shortly canceled by the leaping flames. The fire is believed to have started in the kitchen and spread by hot grease." So, unfortunately, the Rio burned to the ground December 17, 1956. Such a devastating fire, such a tremendous loss, would have given people reason to think that it was gone and would not return. But alas, there was a gentleman who stepped in to make sure that the Rio did indeed come back and come back in a big way. In fact, I was somewhat surprised to learn that the gentleman who was responsible for bringing the Rio back from the ashes was none other than Mr. Z.B. Bullock. Item number 9, if you would, Lee. This is the remodeled Rio restaurant. This picture appeared May 17, 1957 in the Rocky Mount Telegram. The caption reads, "Here's a photo of the handsome new Rio restaurant, which has been rebuilt on the same site on US 301 north of Rocky Mount, and which is scheduled to open next week under the same management. The old building burned to the ground last December." Now, this appeared May the 17th, 1957. No mention of Z.B. Bullock in that caption right there. But a few short months later, August the 2nd of 1957, the local Kiwanis Club had a tribute meeting, if you will. Item number 10, if you would, Lee. This meeting was to pay tribute to none other than Z.B. Bullock. And I'm not going to read this whole article, but I do want to read a little bit of it here for you. It says, "Rocky Mount Kiwanians indulged in one of their rare tribute-type programs Thursday when they gathered some 100 strong, despite vacations and the weather, at the Rio restaurant to sing the praises of Z.B. Bullock, longtime member of the club and a pioneer in various business and real estate endeavors." And it goes on to talk about the many endeavors of Mr. Bullock, talks about his father, Mr. W. Orrin Bullock. And his father wanted him to be a pharmacist or a doctor, and Mr. Bullock wanted to go in the meat business, and his father finally gave him his blessings, and he went on to go into the meat business. But I had no idea that Z.B. Bullock was in any way affiliated with the Rio Club, but as it turns out, he was, and he was actually very much instrumental in getting the Rio Club back up and rebuilt and back open. And so, you know, I've said before on this show, in 1966, my family moved over into Inglewood, and we were neighbors, in fact, of Mr. Z.B. Bullock. We lived literally 2 blocks away from him, and so I got to meet him and know him at a very young age. I never knew him professionally, but as a neighbor, he was just a heck of a nice guy. He was, oh golly, probably already in his 80s when I first come to meet him, and I was a young fellow then, maybe 9 or 10 years old. But Mr. Bullock was just always very polite, very courteous to me and all the kids in the neighborhood, and I really thought a lot of him. And so it was just neat to find out that he was involved in bringing the Rio back from the brink of disaster, if you will. In fact, Lee, go ahead and let's put up item number 11. This is just another picture of the Rio. This was from 1957 also. Obviously after it had been rebuilt, and I think this is from a postcard, if I'm not mistaken. I actually, this was one I had in my collection of pictures, and I didn't have it identified other than Rio 1957, but I think it's from a postcard. And then lastly, item number 12, Lee, this is just another shot of the Rio, and you see inside, it was a really, really swanky place, really nice. And It went on for a number of years, I think well into the 1970s, if I remember correctly. And so I'm not sure why it eventually closed down for good, but of course the Elks Lodge ended up taking that building over and some years later, and they have been the most recent tenants of the building. So I see it's time for our first commercial break. So Lee, bring it back to me. When we get back from the break, we're going to talk a little bit about a lady some of you may remember from school, you may not, but her name was Molly Pitcher. At least she was referred to as Molly Pitcher. So if that name doesn't ring a bell to you, it will in a little bit. So don't go anywhere. When we come out from the break, we'll tell you about Molly Pitcher and some other ladies, and we'll teach a little bit about American history. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more Way Back Wednesday.
Today, having the right healthcare plan tailored to your specific needs is vital to your peace of mind. The question is not if you will need the coverage, but when. And when that time comes, you want to be prepared. With the rising cost of medication, medical procedures, and doctor visits, you should know which is the right insurance plan for you. From life insurance, affordable health care, to Medicare, there are a lot of insurance options available, and choosing a plan can be overwhelming. Having Gus Tullis as your insurance professional on your side will give you peace of mind, because you will know you are covered with the insurance that meets your needs.
Hello, my name is Gus Tullis of Gus Tullis Insurance, and I've been helping people with their insurance needs for well over 20 years. Call me today. I'll answer any question you have. 252-937-6913. Looking forward to hearing from you.
I'm Daniel Moss, owner of Cornerstone Funeral Home, and I'd like to invite you and your family to give our family an opportunity to serve you in your time of need. And we offer a full line of funeral services, everything from visitations to graveside services to cremations on site with a live crematory, as well as a banquet hall to meet the catering needs of our families that we serve. We offer catering service, we offer refreshments prior to visitations and services of our family, and we want to invite you to come and experience the difference here at Cornerstone Funeral Home.
There's a main nerve that leaves your back that goes into your hip and goes down your leg. It's called the sciatic nerve. A back injury can put pressure on that nerve, causing pain, numbness, tingling. Chiropractors can actually help that. At the Hammer Chiropractic Center on Sunset, we know exactly what to do. We have very good relationships with the doctors in Rocky Mount. We like to co-manage people's care. Some medications may help us do our jobs, and our jobs may help their medications work better.
If you or your loved one is living with hearing loss, and if you haven't found a solution that fits your lifestyle, then you should consult with the local experts at the new Hearing Aid Urgent Care in Nashville, North Carolina. Hearing Aid Urgent Care is a place to go for over-the-counter hearing solutions that will improve your daily life and communication between your loved ones and you. Purchasing in our store does not require any prescription or medical recommendation. Our team of experts does recommend a hearing examination so we can help you purchase the correct product for your personal needs. We hold regular listen and learn events so you can ask questions and work with the high-quality products from our vendors to find out what hearing device will best suit you before you buy. Open Friday and Saturday, 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. And you can call 252-459-4008 to find out more information. Hearing Aid Urgent Care located at 102 West Nashville Drive in Nashville, North Carolina.
And we're back. Before got into the Rio and the Carlisle and those pictures, we were talking a little bit about, this being the July 4th weekend and Independence Day, one of my favorite holidays, bar none. And while I was researching for tonight's show, I actually stumbled across a couple of things that some I remembered, others I did not. One was Molly Pitcher. If Molly Pitcher's name doesn't ring a bell with you, we'll talk a little bit about Molly in just a minute. But, there's so many myths and legends and stories that have emanated from wars over the years, and certainly the Revolutionary War is no different. And Molly Pitcher gained her stardom, if you will, from an incident that supposedly took place during the Revolutionary War. And the story goes that There was a woman named Mary Ludwig Hayes. That was Molly Pitcher's real name, Mary Ludwig Hayes. And Mary married this fella, I think his name was Robert, perhaps Robert. I'm not sure about his first name. Anyway, last name was Hayes, obviously. And he served in the Revolutionary War. And as it turns out, it was commonplace back then for women to accompany their men to their duty stations and, in fact, sometimes out onto the battlefield. And so in this one battle up in New Jersey, in later years referred to as the Battle of Monmouth, apparently there was a spring nearby, and Miss Mary, later become known as Molly, would go to the spring with a bucket of water and come back and give drink of water to her husband and the fellow soldiers. That was one story that was told. Another story was told was that these cannons, every time they would fire the cannon, it would have to be wiped down with water, I guess, to either clean out the whatever residue left inside, perhaps maybe to cool it down too. But anyway, so there's some discrepancy about whether or not she was actually there to give water to the soldiers or to help cool the cannon down or help clean the cannon out. Not sure about the true facts in that regard. But in any case, the story goes that she was there giving water to her husband and the other soldiers, and she'd make multiple trips back and forth from the spring that was close by, right directly into the field of battle, and did this repeatedly until such time as her husband was wounded. He was wounded by an attack and fell to the ground, and apparently he was the one that was manning this cannon. And so since her husband was unable to continue his role manning the cannon, she jumped up and resumed command, if you will, of the cannon. And so there's a lot of stories being told over the years about, and she, by the way, she acquired the name Molly Pitcher because supposedly of her going, bringing buckets of water to the soldiers and giving them, water to drink and so forth. Pitcher being a reference to the bucket that she brought the water back to them in. So anyway, I stumbled across her name, first of all, and the name rang a bell. I said, I know I've heard that name. I wasn't quite sure why and what context I'd heard the name, but I knew I'd heard the name. So I got to looking in my favorite source for information here lately, the newspapers.com website, and I immediately began looking for Molly Pitcher. And lo and behold, I started finding ads and articles and all kind of neat stuff about Molly Pitcher. Some is supposedly to be true, other is probably legend or myth. We don't know for sure. But anyway, that being said, Lee, if you would put up item number 13, in the Rocky Mount Telegram edition, November the 2nd, 1945, this ad appeared. And you see the young lady there has got a ramrod on the bore of the cannon there. And it says, "Salute to American women." And the caption reads, "Molly Pitcher fired the cannon which turned the tide of battle back in 1778. In World War II, women served in the armed forces. They worked in war industries. They sold bonds. They gave millions of hours to volunteer service to help mend the human destruction the war brought. Because the job of providing well-balanced family meals is women's biggest task, we are proud that the bread we make, always fresh, tender-crusted and delicious, help to simplify meal preparation in so many patriotic American homes." So, and I'd never heard of this brand of bread, Bambi. Bambi is the brand name here. And of course, they use the story of Molly Pitcher to promote and salute the American women, particularly those who served in some degree, some manner during wartime. And so, whether or not Molly Pitcher or Mary Hayes had anything to do with turning the tide of battle, as this item says here, back in 1978, we will never know, obviously. But it was just one example of how she became, in folklore anyway, almost a legend in her the way that she's been portrayed over years. And there were several other references to Molly Pitcher, and we'll get to some more of those in a little bit. But while I was researching Molly Pitcher, I stumbled across a few other names of women who had notable contributions, if you will, to the war effort during the American Revolutionary War. Some of you've probably heard of, others perhaps not. The first on the list, however, I'm sure most of you have heard, Betsy Ross. Now, from the time we were kids, we've always been taught that Betsy Ross was the one who sewed the first American flag. And indeed, that has been taught in history books for many, many generations. Fact of the matter is, however, that we don't know for sure whether that's true or not. As it turns out, that story came about by her grandson 100 years after she supposedly sewed the first American flag. And so I'll read you something that I stumbled across today. It's a little bit of information about Betsy Ross and why there's some question about whether or not she was indeed the one who sewed the first American flag. It says, credited with being the first one who sewed the first flag of the United States, it's possible that this is not entirely true. There's evidence to suggest another man, Mr. Francis Hopkinson, may have been the one to actually design the flag. In fact, in 1780, Hopkinson wrote a letter in which he claimed he designed the first flag. Now, Mr. Hopkinson was a designer. He was a man of many talents, let's put it that way. And he actually had designed logos for various government entities and agencies and so forth. And so he was certainly known in the circles, and certainly one who could have known the right people to pitch, if you will, pitch an idea to them for an American flag. Now, it's been said, the story that was accompanied this Betsy Ross story was that George Washington and a couple other dignitaries came to Betsy Ross and said, hey, we want you to, here's what we want on the flag. We want so many stars, so many stripes, or whatever, and we want you to sew the flag for us. That's a story that's kind of been associated with Betsy Ross over the years. But in fact, there's no evidence of that anywhere. In other words, there's no documentation, there's no newspaper articles, nothing but handed down folklore, if you will, about how Betsy Ross came to do this. This Mr. Francis Hopkinson, however, there is definitely documentation that suggests anyway that he knew people and that his line of work certainly would have put him in a position to possibly be able to be the one to not only design but to actually create the first American flag. We'll never know for sure, but it's just something that I thought was interesting. I mentioned Molly Pitcher, Mary Hayes, just a minute ago. Martha Dandridge Washington, that's a name that should ring a bell with you. Martha Dandridge Washington was, of course, the first lady. She was married to George Washington. Interesting couple things about her. Said, you know, the whole time that her husband was serving in the war, and then later when he became president of the United States, he was gone quite a bit, obviously. His professional life kept him away from home for extended periods of time. And during the time he was gone, Martha took after the family business. She took care of all the dealings for the family. And she was actually, in addition to being capable, very capable, she was also very outspoken, and she was very much, on the forefront of leading women's rights, for example, and making sure that the voice of the women was kept in the forefront. Certainly in the circles that she would have been having access to, she was instrumental in getting some women's rights pushed through, if not immediately, certainly down the road. Abigail Smith Adams. Abigail Smith Adams was the wife of John Adams. They were actually the first couple to live in the White House. The original, of course, White House, capital of the United States was in New York City. And in 1797, the capital was moved from New York to Washington, D.C. So John Adams and his wife Abigail were actually the first couple, the first president and wife to live in the White House. And like Martha Dandridge Washington, Abigail Adams was very instrumental in managing the family business and the family affairs while her husband was out being a lawyer, a political revolutionary, and a diplomat, and of course, in later times, the president. She has been credited, in fact, with being a key political advisor to her husband, not only during his time in the war, in the Revolutionary War, but also as president. And lastly, while we're talking about women who had some notable contributions during the Revolutionary War, there was a young teenager. I don't have an exact age for her, other than that she was a teenager in 1777. But her name was Sybil Ludington, or Ludington, Ludington, Ludington possibly. She's been said to have been the female equivalent of Paul Revere, except that she actually rode twice as far in a driving rainstorm through two counties Putnam County and Dutchess County, I believe this is in Pennsylvania, in order to alert the local militias that the British were coming. So these women were just 5 of many that had a role, if you will, in the Revolutionary War and the just before, during, and just after the war period. And like Molly Pitcher, some of what's been said about these ladies is based in truth, I'm sure. Some of it may have just been fluff over the years. But speaking of myths and legends, I stumbled across a really interesting document today also that talks about the myths, and it lists 5 myths about the start of the Revolutionary War. And if you're like me and thought you had a pretty good handle on what happened to start Revolutionary War. And by the way, we celebrate July 4, 1776 as the year that we created the Declaration of Independence. And we didn't really get independent in 1776. In fact, the war drug on until 1783. It was 1783 when all the fighting and all the hostilities finally ceased, and we were indeed a new independent company. So it's kind of ironic that we celebrate July 4th as being Independence Day, when in reality it was 1783, before the war was officially over, and we had indeed gained our independence from Great Britain. Okay, myth number 1. Did Paul Revere say the British are coming? That seems highly unlikely for several reasons. Revere was on a secret mission to warn the Patriots about the advance of British forces, and at the time, the colonists were mostly British. So it was unlikely he would have said the British are coming. If anything, he probably said the regulars are coming. The regulars are coming. Myth number 2. Did Paul Revere ride by himself at midnight to warn the Patriots? The answer to this is there were multiple riders as part of the intelligence effort set up by the Patriots. 2 other men, William Dawes and Samuel Prescott, rode with Revere. Revere never reached Concord as part of the ride. He was detained by the British after leaving Lexington. It was Prescott who rode from Lexington to Concord and declared, the British are coming, the British are coming. Item number 3 says, who shot the shot heard around the world? That's often been talked about, the shot heard around the world. In Ralph Waldo Emerson's Concord hymn, the embattled farmers fired the shot heard around the world at the British regulars in Concord. More likely, however, the shots were fired at Lexington, where the British fired on the Patriot militia, who also may have taken a few shots into the confusion. One eyewitness to the skirmish was Paul Revere, who had been detained but not arrested by the British. He couldn't tell who fired the first shot in his account. Both sides later accused the other of firing first. Which is often the case in war. There's been a lot of discrepancy about who fired the first shot during the Civil War, for example, then in Sumter, South Carolina. It's been said that the Confederates fired the first shot. It's been said that the Unions fired the first shot. I don't know that we know for sure about that, but in any case, it's common that there's been some discrepancy about who fired the first shot. Number 4 says, were the colonists just a bunch of farmers fighting against the British? In reality, the Patriots at Lexington and Concord were well organized and well supplied. Many were veterans of the French and Indian campaigns, and they better understood the battle tactics in the area than the British. After withdrawing back to Boston, Lord Percy said, they have amongst them those who know very well what they are about, having been employed as rangers among the Indians. And lastly, item number 5, did the Patriots engage the British from a distance using rifles? The colonists primarily used muskets and not rifles, and they had to get fairly close to the enemy in small group formations to be effective. An article in the American Rifleman website makes a convincing argument that the Patriots were better shots than the British, but only 2% of their shots were on target. Much of the fighting in the British retreat was in hand-to-hand combat, and the British were able to use bayonets. Patriots used circling tactics to constantly harass the British while building up their troop strength. In the end, about 15,000 Patriot militia and Minutemen surrounded Boston as they trailed the British retreat. So, as is often the case in war and in combat in general, there are various tactics used, and certainly having fought the Indians over many years, many of the colonists had developed some tactics from the Indians that the British had never seen before. And of course, that led, in some part anyway, to a somewhat smaller, somewhat inferior army being able to eventually defeat a larger, more equipped, better equipped army in the British. And I see it's time for our next commercial break. So Lee, let's go ahead and take that break now. When we come back, we're going to show you a couple of maps, or at least a map, talk a little bit more about some of the things that have transpired over the years. And I'm going to show you some pictures and some articles that I just stumbled across while I was looking for research on tonight's show that I thought were interesting. So don't go anywhere, and we'll be right back with more Way Back Wednesday.
Today, having the right health care plan tailored to your specific needs is vital to your peace of mind. The question is not if you will need the coverage, but when. And when that time comes, you want to be prepared. With the rising cost of medication, medical procedures, and doctor visits, you should know which is the right insurance plan for you. From life insurance, affordable health care, to Medicare, there are a lot of insurance options available, and choosing a plan can be overwhelming. Having Gus Tullis as your insurance professional on your side will give you peace of mind, because you will know you are covered with the insurance that meets your needs.
Hello, my name is Gus Tullis of Gus Tullis Insurance, and I've been helping people with their insurance needs for well over 20 years. Call me today. I'll answer any question you have. 252-937-6913. Looking forward to hearing from you.
I'm Daniel Moss, owner of Cornerstone Funeral Home, and I
Back
like to invite you and your
Wednesdays.
family to give our family an opportunity to serve you in your time of need. And we offer a full line of funeral services, everything from visitations to graveside services to cremations on site with a live crematory, as well as a banquet hall to meet the catering needs of our families that we serve. We offer catering service. We offer refreshments prior to visitations and services of our family. And we want to invite you to come and experience the difference here at Cornerstone Funeral Home.
There's a main nerve that leaves your back that goes into your hip and goes down your leg. It's called the sciatic nerve. A back injury can put pressure on that nerve, causing pain, numbness, tingling. Chiropractors can actually help that. At the Hammer Chiropractic Center on Sunset, we know exactly what to do. We have very good relationships with the doctors in Rocky Mount. We like to co-manage people's care. Some medications may help us do our jobs, and our jobs may help their medications work better.
If you or your loved one is living with hearing loss, and if you haven't found a solution that fits your lifestyle, then you should consult with the local experts at the new Hearing Aid Urgent Care in Nashville, North Carolina. Hearing Aid Urgent Care is a place to go for over-the-counter hearing solutions that will improve your daily life and communication between your loved ones and you. Purchasing in our store does not require any prescription or medical recommendation. Our team of experts does recommend a hearing examination so we can help you purchase the correct product for your personal needs. We hold regular listen and learn events so you can ask questions and work with the high-quality products from our vendors to find out what hearing device will best suit you before you buy. Open Friday and Saturday, 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. And you can call 252-459-4008 to find out more information. Hearing Aid Urgent Care located at 102 West Nashville Drive in Nashville, North Carolina.
We're back. During the break, I had an interesting phone call. I had a call all the way from Texas. And Bob League, I need you to call me and give me some information here, because Mr. David Horn said he was a member of your gang from way back around Rocky Mount. But anyway, yes, Mr. David Horn called. He's watching the show live from Texas. And so thank you, Mr. Horn, for calling in. Thank you for watching. Appreciate all your viewers. We've got viewers scattered about the country. I know Randy Harrell's probably online watching. Hi, Randy, out of Nashville, Tennessee. And so it's really neat that this show has such far-reaching viewers, and we appreciate all of our viewers. And, while I'm on the topic, we also appreciate I just realized tonight we've got a new sponsor for the show, the hearing aid place there. They're actually one of my customers too. I didn't realize that they were going to be sponsoring the show, but I do appreciate that. So anyway, we're talking about the Revolutionary War and how we won our independence, and the myths and legends and many stories that that have, over the years have been wrung out of that whole that war and that whole ordeal there. So, you know, the good news is we were successful in gaining our independence from Great Britain. It was certainly a long, hard fight, and, you know, many a good men and women, too, fell in battle to achieve that goal. But the ultimate outcome was that we achieved independence. And as I said earlier, it's a bit ironic that we celebrate July 4, 1776, as the day we gained our independence, when in fact it was 1783 before the war was officially over. Anyway, let's jump back into it, Lee. I stumbled across some map today I'd never seen before. It's arguably the very first United States of America map that was ever created. I don't have a specific date other than what I do have is a year, 1783. And this map, when I first looked at it, I had to kind of get my bearings. The upper right-hand corner, it's kind of hard to make out. That whole area up there is referred to as New England. Present-day Maine, Rhode Island, Connecticut, all the New England states would be up in that area there. As you go down the eastern seaboard there, you can make out the shorelines of Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and go on down to Georgia. And at the very bottom of the map, it actually runs out at the very tip top of Florida. Basically the panhandle of Florida, and from that point eastward to the coast, but the whole peninsula of Florida is not even shown on this map. So I'm not sure why that was. I found it interesting that they didn't include Florida. On the left-hand side, I first thought that was the Pacific Ocean, but when I turned the map sideways and looked, it says Louisiana. So this was in 1783, and if memory serves, the Louisiana Purchase took place sometime in the early 1800s. I'm not sure of the exact date, but in any case, that's not the ocean to the left, that's the Louisiana Territory that eventually would become part of the United States. But in 1783, this was the United States. And of course, at the very top of the map, you see is Canada up there. And I thought it was really interesting that they identified the Great Lakes in the Midwest there pretty good. I mean, there's Lake Ontario, Lake Erie, Lake Michigan, Lake Superior, and Lake Huron, and they all look relatively close to what you would see today if you looked at a map of this part of the country and looked at the Great Lakes. So in 1783, whoever made this map was a very good, very talented map maker. And the coastline, as I said, the eastern seaboard there, it's very easy to make out distinct areas that you can readily identify as being coastlines of the states that border the ocean there on the eastern seaboard. So just a neat old map. Like I said, this was, I'm not sure where this map is. It's got, so let me see if I can put my Buddy Holly glasses on here and read. It says, the map of the United States of America agreeable to the peace of 1783. That's all it says in the bottom right-hand corner, agreeable to the peace. But that's what we accomplished. 1783, we accomplished our goal that we set out in declaring war with Great Britain, and this was a result. This was the United States of America, probably the first official map that was ever created of the United States of America. Okay, let's move on then. Item number 15. You know, Independence Day has always been a holiday for stores to celebrate with sales and so forth. And when I saw this ad here, two things jumped out at me. Number one, of course, being the Independence Day, July 4th ad. And number two, the Anchor Store. That was the name of the store. The ad reads, "This day should bear more significance than ever before. It is a day of double meaning, and the thoughts of every true American should be welded on the both sides of our forefathers and on the brave boys of our present day who so gallantly made the sacrifice or otherwise offered their all for the cause. And may the peace which so recently been restored to the world remain as an everlasting monument to those who suffered, bled, and died for right, humanity, and justice." Now this appeared in the Rocky Mount Telegram July the 3rd, 1919. That's when this ad appeared, 1919. So World War I had just wrapped up a year prior. There was still a lot of patriotism flowing freely all through the country. and this ad appeared. And you'll notice that they're not advertising anything for sale, which is another great thing about this ad. They're not trying to sell anything. They're just trying to keep the memory of those who lost their lives in conflict, keep their memory alive. I thought it was a great way to commemorate and to memorialize those people who died in conflict. And so the Anchor store would be closed tomorrow. This ad appeared on the 3rd, of course, July 3rd, and it says the store will be closed tomorrow, July 4th. And at the bottom it says the Anchor Store, Rocky Mount Shopping Center. Well, we've covered shopping centers and stores around Rocky Mount over the years. And I have to say, this is one that I just did not remember. If we've ever talked about the Anchor Store before, I did not remember it. And so I said, well, where was it? Where did I find out? And so I went to my trusty Rocky Mount City Directory. And yes, I have a 1920 Rocky Mount City Directory. And Lee, if you would, item number 16, in the Rocky Mount City Directory, the Anchor Store had a prominent ad there. And you see it says Rocky Mount's leading department store, ready-to-wear millinery, dry goods, notions, shoes, and menswear. Our enormous buying power for a number of stores enables us to sell for less. So this was a chain. Now, I don't know how many there were. And I cut this off. I do apologize. But this store was located at 220 South Main Street. So that would have been on the Nash County side, of course, probably down closer in the second block anyway, but in the general direction, probably closer to the train station, what I'm trying to say, that area down there, the hotels, the Rick's Hotel and so forth. But in any case, that was where the Anchor Store was located, 220 South Main Street. And they were just one of many ads I saw that were advertising over the years in support of July 4th. And you know, Rocky Mount had for many years, we had a very prominent local citizen who was so in much a part of July 4th around here that he became known as Uncle Sam. Uncle Sam Davis was his name. And there was an article appeared in the Rocky Mount Telegram on January the 17th, 1949. Lee, if you would, put up item number 17. If you don't remember or didn't know Mr. Uncle Sam Davis, it says Rocky Mount's Uncle Sam Davis, who departs Tuesday morning for Washington, D.C. to join 40,000 other inaugural parade participants, and Virginia's George Washington, who departed in 1799 after participating in 2 inaugural ceremonies. Both began their trek along the road to prominence with a chopping episode of some distinction. Uncle Sam, who incidentally was preceded by George by only a single day and a goodly number of years, claims his experience with a chopping instrument was an accident, while historians claim that George's incident was not intentional but fictitious. So anyway, this was Mr. A.C. Davis. He was born sometime in the 1800s. This article appeared January of 1949, and the story says that he was born almost 70 years ago, so that would have put him sometime in the mid-1800s. But anyway, it said it was in 1936 that folks began recognizing in him an astounding similarity to the country's universally accepted figure, Uncle Sam. So it goes on to tell about Uncle Sam Davis began to be a fixture in any kind of event related to July 4th around the Rocky Mount area, and indeed as far away as Washington, D.C. If you go to the public library, there's actually a bust up on the second floor in the historical room up there. There's a bust that Frank Thigpen made of Mr. Sam Davis, and it's a very remarkable resemblance to the Uncle Sam we all know and associate with being the Uncle Sam. So neat gentleman there. I've got some information somewhere in my notes about A.C. Davis. I want to say he died sometime in the 1960s. I don't quote me, I could be off by a year or two there. But in any case, for many years, he was Uncle Sam for a lot of people around Rocky Mount. Okay, we talked earlier about Molly Pitcher, or Mary Hayes as she was originally named. In 1973, there was a very prestigious award given to none other than Ms. Pat Nixon, Richard M. Nixon's wife. Item number 18, if you would, Lee. February 21st, 1973, this article appeared in this picture of Miss Pat Nixon holding up an award she was given. And the caption reads, "The Molly Pitcher Award. Mrs. Pat Nixon holds the Molly Pitcher Award, which was presented to her Tuesday in Washington by the Women's Forum on National Security. The award is presented annually to a citizen deemed to have performed distinguished service during the preceding year. The award was named after Mary Ludwig, and she later married Mr. Hayes, of course, a Revolutionary War heroine. Mary was better known to Americans as Molly Pitcher." Now, I'm not exactly sure what it was that Pat Nixon did to gain this award. Not saying it wasn't deserved. I just don't know. It doesn't say what she did, just that she was awarded this award. But something that I found interesting about this, too, was that it says here in the caption that the award is presented annually to a citizen deemed to have performed distinguished service during the preceding year. So I thought, okay, well, let's see who else received this award. And I did a search from the 1920s all the way to 2023, and I could not find one reference to another single human being that won the Molly Pitcher Award, or who was awarded the Molly Pitcher Award. So I don't know if Pat Nixon was the first and only recipient of this award. That's possible, I suppose, but I could find no reference anywhere in the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of articles in the newspapers.com website. Could not find another reference to another soul who was awarded the Molly Pitcher Award. So kudos to Pat Nixon. She got it. She was the only one, so be it, but she got it. Okay, I mentioned that Molly Pitcher had a bit of a following, and certainly a lot of historical information was put out about her, some true, some not so much. I found no less than 4 different stories about her over the years. Item number 9, we're about to run out of time here. We'll try to blow through these pretty quickly. October 19, 1975, there was this little blip here appeared. It says bicentennial facts. It says writers have usually assumed that Molly Pitcher was carrying drinking water to thirsty soldiers on the battlefield at Monmouth, when in fact she was probably engaged in a vital military task. Water was an essential element in the firing of artillery. After the cannon was discharged, the barrel had to be swabbed with water prior to reloading. Molly Pitcher was probably carrying water for the guns, the World Almanac notes. I mentioned earlier that there's a possibility that she, even though she may have been giving water to some of the soldiers, she may have indeed been involved in keeping that gun able to continually fire. Okay, number 20, Lee, item number 20, July of 1985, 10 years later. The Junior Editor's Quiz, which would be one of my favorite parts of the Telegram when I was a child. But this appeared, it says, during the Battle of Monmouth, Molly carried pitchers of water from a nearby spring. And it just shows a drawing there of the soldiers who have fallen, and she's got a jug there and the cannon in the background. And again, the story goes that once her husband, who was firing the cannon, was injured, she jumped up there and took over the duties of firing the cannon. Okay, next item, Lee. It's just another little questionnaire that appeared in a telegram. It said Molly Pitcher, 1754 to 1832, whose real name was Mary Ludwig, was a heroine of the Battle of Monmouth in the Revolutionary War. Born near Trenton, New Jersey, she went to Carlisle, Pennsylvania at an early age. Later, she married John Casper Hayes, a barber. He enlisted in the 1st Pennsylvania Artillery in 1775 and spent the winter of 1777 and 1778 at Valley Forge. Molly joined her husband doing various jobs around the camp. During the Battle of Monmouth on Sunday, June 28th, Molly followed the troops to battle carrying a pitcher of water from a nearby spring. Her husband had a heat stroke, this says, and could not continue. Now, other stories say he was wounded. So, as I said, there's a little bit of discrepancy about how it came to be that she was there, but nonetheless, she participated at least in that battle. Okay, real quickly, Lee, item number 22. July 4th celebration, July 5th, 1975, saw Congressman L.H. Fountain here in Rocky Mount. He was examining the Brown Bess musket of Ted Pfeiffer of Philadelphia during the July 4th celebration at Rocky Mount City Lake. I think I was there for that celebration. I seem to recall seeing this. But anyway, you know, it's a shame we don't have more of these celebrations around here. I'm not sure they're even going to do fireworks this year. I've not heard one way or the other. They may. But in any case, in years past, it's certainly been a big deal to have fireworks displays and celebrations and so forth. And I just realized we run slam out of time, so I've got a few more pictures. I'll save these for next week. The remaining pictures I have were actually on another topic anyway. So bring it back to me, Lee, if you would. I want to thank those who called in and shared your memories and your information with us. I appreciate always hearing from our viewers. Thank you so much, folks, for watching. Have a great week. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you next week with more Way Back Tuesday. Be kind to one another, too, by the way. We'll see you. Bye-bye.